Hello friends and sunflowers, my name is Lena and welcome back to my channel. This is the second video breaking down the second chapter of the webtoons and web novels from HYBE. So those original stories, the StarSeekers, Dark Moon, Blood Altar, and 7fates Chakho. There are going to be no spoilers for future chapters in this, they're just my speculation, and I also ask that you please don't post any spoilers for future chapters in the description below if you've bought the next chapters. I'm reading this one by one, I'm trying to avoid spoilers. I've seen a couple, but I won't mention them and I will pretend they don't exist. Also, the web novel is not technically out for free in English, but it is in several other languages, anything that's not on Wattpad, so English and Spanish are the only two languages that you have to pay for to read it, so I'm taking this as it's out for free, because it is in several other languages. Also, I'm going to start featuring comments and theories, so if you have theories that aren't spoilers but are just like thoughts and theories, please leave them below and I might feature your comment in the relevant section. So yeah, again, I think I'm just going to stick in the order 1, 2, 3, 7fates, Dark Moon, and then StarSeekers because that's the order that it comes out in. That's all I have to say. Let's just get into it. So 7fates Chakho. I'm actually going to start with the web novel here because it's behind the webtoon, so like it's like covering some of the last events that we saw and catching up. So first it does tell us a little bit of the history of Sinshi, which is the city that this takes place in. So I did a little bit of research on Sinshi last time, and it is actually a part of Korean folklore, like creation mythology, and it literally means city of God, which is pretty bold of the person who created this city in the story to name it that. Interestingly, even in the original myth, it was founded by someone named Hwanung, which is super similar to Hwan Woong. So I kind of assumed that that's just like a play on words, like they purposefully named him that as a reference to Hwanung. Also, this creation myth is the one with like the tigers and the bears, so basically there was one of each, and they were promised if they stayed in this cave with like 20 garlic bulbs and mugwort only to eat for however long, then they would become human at the end of this period. The tiger got tired of it and left, but the bear stayed and became human, like a beautiful human woman, who later like married Hwanung and had a child, and they had a child. But clearly this is referencing those myths. And that's really cool. I do kind of wish that there was like an author's note that like described like, oh, this is a reference to this, just so that if you are curious about this stuff, you can look it up, because if I hadn't just had the inclination to start looking into Sinshi, which I thought was such an interesting name for a city, I probably would never have known this. So yeah, into the story, Hwanung seems to be leaning into like the creation of a better city, and Zeha thinks it's not actually working, it's just creating a bigger divide between people who are rich and people who aren't. So like the rich part of the city looks clean and lovely, and the poor side looks like it's becoming a slum. And then he says like, but it's not even that the crime rate is better, it's probably equal on both sides. The rich people are just better at covering it up. And that's so true. HYBE is kind of following like this trend of highlighting differences between like how rich you are, like how much money you're making, kind of like a class disparity, I guess. They recently did that with ENHYPEN's comeback as well, which I still haven't made a video on. They're clearly wanting to highlight this again. And you know, BTS have talked about this before. Songs like Bapse come to mind, like where they're talking about like class division and stuff like that. But I really like that they're highlighting it again. Because yeah, like the rich are even richer because of this division, and the poor are poor. And the rich just hide everything better because they're rich. So that's the state of the city. We also get more information on the month that passed between like Zeha in the hospital and Zeha going back up the mountain before he meets Haru, including like more details on like how people died. Like it was more descriptive of like the way that the bomb were killing people, which is relatively graphic, so we're not going to get into it. But it does include like a fog or a sandstorm appearing, and it makes me think of both the cat as we see it depicted in The Doom's Night for TXT, and this like fog that chases the HYBE members in the Fever music video. I think I posted this on Twitter like a while ago, but I was like, oh, what if the cat is a bomb? And I could see that actually being the case because it's kind of implied that bomb are almost held in like another universe in the first place. I mean, I don't know if technically that's what it is, but like they seem to be a bunch of different shapes and a bunch of different animals, and to a degree they seem to be able to shape shift. I wouldn't be surprised if that's somehow the case. Anyway, Hwang Moon, the like creator of this city, or the owner of it I guess, is like, hey, anyone who catches these bomb and become bomb hunters, I will give you like these insane rewards, like monetary rewards. Yay, go out and risk your life for us. So basically he asks like people to become bomb hunters, and we do know that obviously the 7fates story, this one is going to become that, because in the intro they told us they are the bomb hunters named Chakho. So I'm kind of assuming that we're gonna see this announcement happen in the webtoon really soon too, just like in a slightly different order, because it's probably like an important part of the story. Oh, and also like Zeha mentioned that he previously had been like suspected as being the cause of this attack, but then he notices that he's no longer being followed by the investigators, and they realize that he's not the one who's attacking people. He just happened to be a victim. By the time that all of this information is presented to us, Zeha is at the top of the mountain again, a month later after like being hospitalized. And as we saw at the beginning of the webtoon's first chapter, he examines the rock with Haru, and Haru appears. Haru, by the way, seems to be associated with blue light, which appears in his eyes. He's described as looking as like a rock, which I guess like his hair and everything like that, but then for some reason he even says like, oh, look at my eyes, it's like a rock. And it's like, well, your eyes are blue. And this is consistent, by the way, in the webtoon and the web novel. They appear blue in the webtoon as well. I'm more inclined to say that blue has to do with magic, but I don't know, we'll see. Haru actually explains a little bit more in this chapter too than he does in the webtoon, so that's really exciting. He talks about, you know, guarding the entrance of Inwang Dungeon, specifically is what his seal is called. So it's like a dungeon. So I don't know if it's like an alternate dimension or like a pocket dimension where these bomb are kept. I'm not sure, because apparently he just doesn't really remember more, or he doesn't really know more. Because Zeha's like, what, like, explain yourself better, and he's like, I don't know. And that's where the chapter kind of ends on. So interestingly, the webtoon starts off basically right around this point. It's either like during this conversation or slightly after, and it starts with a flashback. So we see the tall guy who was in chapter 1 that I thought was a bomb. He's definitely a bomb. And he's apparently the one who killed Zeha's parents, which is lovely. I think I assumed that, and the last time I was like, like this was not a shock to me. I'm like, I feel like he has something to do with his parents. Well, that's what it is. He killed them. Or at least he participated in the event that killed them. I also think we are kind of shown some demonstration of what the bomb can do in terms of like what their abilities are. Obviously we know that there's some sort of fog sandstorm thing that they conjure. But he also seems to be able to access Zeha's memories, or like cause Zeha to remember things. And then he also puts Zeha in like a trance. Like he just like goes completely blank-faced and is just doing what this dude wants him to do. And he like literally makes Zeha, who doesn't remember any of this, to like remember the song to open the seal, and just like causes and like influences him to do it, which I just think is really interesting, and kind of that could be really dangerous if you can like have someone who can like manipulate thoughts and stuff. Yeah. Also, he kind of explains that like January 16th is the one day that Bulm can like come in and be like allowed there, and then at the end of the day I guess they're kind of like pulled back in. But if Zeha sings the like song, then it's open, because he opens it like permanently. And it was implied that Zeha's mother did this and kept his father there with her as well. So I guess there's like a sense of resentment there because he got to stay while everyone else got pulled back into the dungeon. I just wonder like why the 16th of January, like why that date? Like what is the significance of that day? I'm gonna have to do some looking up things because it's such an interesting day to pick. Beyond, like, you know, I think I mentioned it last time, like, the fact that Save Me also started on that day. What is the significance of January the 16th, specifically on the Lunar New Year? I don't understand what the significance of that is. I bet you there's something significant about that in the lore or something like that, because it just seems like a random day otherwise. Yeah. Anyways, that bum who tricks Zeha obviously tries to kill him because he's like, well, you opened it, so you can also close it, and I don't want you to be able to do that. So he tries to kill him, and for whatever reason, Zeha does not die. Like, obviously this is a flashback, so we know he doesn't die, but I'm just like, he, like, intended to kill him. So how come Zeha did not die? Like, is he just, like, way more resilient than that guy gave him credit for? Like, he probably thought that Zeha was dead. He, for all intents and purposes, in that one frame, like, Zeha looked a little bit dead. So, like, I don't know, did Haru intervene or something to, like, make it so that he didn't die? I don't know. And we kind of, like, get to meet Zeha's parents because he doesn't really remember them ahead of that. It's like, it's implied that he was just going through life assuming that his parents didn't want him, which is really sad, actually. But he didn't remember, like, the incident where his parents are being killed, and Haru manages to also get him to remember that memory, although it doesn't seem like Haru is the one who's forcing him to remember it. I think he's, like, the trigger for the memory. Also, side note, I love Haru so much. I know there's only, like, 2 characters and a bomb that we have right now, but I love Haru. He's my favorite character. Can I say that? This early on, can I say that? Like, yeah, get revenge. Hunt down those bomb. You guys, yes, I love that driving force. And also, he's just awesome with his blue eyes glowing and stuff. He looks really cool. Anyway, so someone commented, I think Chakho is loosely based on the Idol music video, and I'm kind of like, oh, you know what? I kind of agree with that. Or at least I'd say, like, oh, they liked that direction. Because there was, like, the tiger and everything like that. That was kind of when they decided to go, like, in a really Korean direction, and I absolutely loved the Idol music video. That comeback was great. So yeah, I could see that, actually. Chakho being based on the Idol music video. Or at least, like, the Idol music video, like, around that time, they were coming up with Chakho, and so they were like, ooh, that sounds fun. Let's do something that is inspired by this, and then they really went on, like, their own original story with it. I don't know. Anyways, I'm definitely loving this series, so I can't wait for next week. Next is Dark Moon, the Blood Altar. So the webtoon picks up exactly where it left off on the first chapter. So we get Suha being happy, you know, about attending the academy, and she's, like, happy that Heli believes her and trusts her. We do get some important backstory, like, on the vampires themselves. She says, before apparently Suha was born, they were just mythical creatures, but now they're actually real things. And Heli looks, like, a little almost, like, angry by it. He's like, yeah, like, obviously because he's personally affected. Definitely that adds to, like, the previous theory that the boys, the HYBE boys, were changed either, like, against their will or without actually knowing what was going on. Also, the book that he came to pick up, like, the fact that he's, like, interested in this massive tome of a book, and she's like, whoa, this book is so old, I've never seen anyone reading this. Like, that's obviously a cover-up, and I assume this book is important for something else. I don't know what, though. I have no thoughts on that yet. But yeah, also, side note, I want to attend this school for their library. Can I? Do you think they'll accept me? The library is so big. I love that. I like books, can you tell? Anyways, Suha, as usual, is adorable in this webtoon chapter. I really love webtoon Suha. I just like that she's so, like, excited that she's finally, like, making a connection with someone, and she's like, oh my god, you like books? I like books too, that's all I did. And you kind of can see that she was lonely, and then immediately after she's like, oh my god, I've totally overwhelmed him, like, this sucks, like, that's really relatable. And she's like, oh my god, I didn't ask his name, but luckily he's great, and he comes back and asks her. But, like, it was just a totally normal conversation to be having, like, you know, but she's overthinking it, and I appreciate that they've shown that, because I think that's really relatable. Also, just Heli in general is really adorable in his reactions to her. Like, I know it's only chapter 2, but I do kind of ship them. Don't come at me. They're really cute. Also, in this chapter, we meet a bunch of the others. Gino, Shion, who instantly wants to become friends with Suha because they're in their own dormitory, and he's like, oh, I have a reason to. I want to hang out there still. So we have to befriend her. And then Solon appears like a bit of a buzzkill. Also, these texts are different, so they are talking like in their mind through telepathy at this point. And Solon's like condoning them for wanting to be friends with a human. And he also mentions like there's none others that are like them. I'm not sure if he's implying that there are no other vampires or, you know, what, but it's definitely different from the web novel where Suha was literally previously attacked by another vampire. It could be like that it's talking about there's no other vampires that are as good as them, like a power level thing or something. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting that he's like there's none others that are like us. And he also says like, oh, we can't allow ourselves to feel these emotions, or we can't feel these emotions, which there's a comment I have that the description says a vampire cannot love anyone and a werewolf will love the same person for life in the Spanish description, which I find really interesting, because maybe he's referring to this actually. Vampires for whatever reason can't love, so I don't know if Heli's like an exception, or maybe they just don't understand, because if there's no one else like that sets a precedent, maybe you just never fell in love before, I don't know. The werewolf thing though, I think that's actually a kind of common trope for werewolves, is that they mate for life, or they have one person that they love forever. I know everyone's thinking of Twilight right now. Anyway, he's being kind of rude. He even decides to literally talk out loud, switch from mind talking? What is the word for that? I don't know. They switch from having a conversation in their mind to he literally says out loud, as Suha stands behind him, don't befriend her, don't get close to the new girl or whatever. And he decides to say that one line out loud. Like, oh, come on. He knew that she was behind him. He must. What a jerk. Anyways, in regards to this interaction, there was a comment on WEBTOON that someone on my Discord server pointed out, and it was that people interested in becoming friends with Suha were Heli, who is Heesung, Cheyenne, who is Sunu, and Jino, who is Jake. And like those three characters. Which brings me back to my favorite scene in Drunk Taste. Because I think I probably reference this one the most, where they're like around the cake and they're two different sides and it kind of looks like they're having a standoff with each other while they blow out the candles of this cake. Those three happen to all be on the same side, whereas the other three, not including Jungwon, are on the other side. And they mentioned that this could be the people who are against and for befriending humans. So, I mean, I always speculated that they had some sort of difference in opinion, since they're very tense here. Like, this does not look like a birthday party, but I definitely think that this must be the reason. Like, they're either for befriending humans or against them. And then Jungwon's character, Jaka, might just be, like, neutral to the issue. That's why he's standing in the middle. And I think that's probably our strongest evidence at this point of what is actually going on here and why they're facing off against each other. But what do you guys think? Because I when I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's... Anyway, so there is some intrigue on the front of the web novel as well. Like, the boys are curious as to who Suha is, because obviously the vampire that attacks her was like, oh, he recognized her. It is you! And the boys were like wondering like how it is that they also are being recognized, and then it kind of comes out that they've been dreaming about her and they've nicknamed her Princess, which makes me just think that these dreams that they're having actually have to do with what we saw in Drunk Dazed again. So like any of the times when they're like in the royal setting, she's the princess. So yeah, her nickname is Princess in that situation, and so they're like, that's her, that's the girl in our dreams. By the way, like, HYBE's song lyrics have many mentions of dreams, which is just really interesting, but I think we can pretty solidly say that any of those, like, flashbacks scenes, like, any of those, like, scenes where it looks like they're in the royal place are related to the dreams that they have. So I think that's pretty solid at this point, because it just makes sense. I also still think that the story in the webtoon and the web novel are different. But I do think that probably the music videos have shown us like both of them at different points in time, because I do think it's like different dimensions, and I think we've seen both dimensions in the music videos, so yeah. Also, Suha starts getting these dreams now too, but she dreams specifically the situation with Heli, and I think it's a little cliche, but It's also really cute because she wakes up and she's like, why did I dream that? I met him once. Like, part of me really likes that trope, even though it's like genuinely overused. Especially because she freaks out about it for like a little too long for my tastes. But anyway, some other things that are important that I wanted to point out in this chapter are we get confirmation that Jan, who is Jay's character, and yes, I did mispronounce his name last episode, sorry, Jan, does have a lot of strength in the webtoon. They pretty much tell us straight up that that's his power, so nice. Hisung specifically calls the vampires they encounter low-grade vampires, and we did know that there was like bad vampires, good vampires, but he specifically calls them low-grade, and I'm not sure if that's just like an insult or if it's a specific classification, like there's a high-grade vampire, but it could also just be like, oh, I can't believe they're so low-grade because they can't control themselves or whatever. In which case, if that also applies to the webtoon, the low-grade, high-grade thing could be why Solon originally is like, well, there's no one like us, because they're powerful or high-grade or something. Just a guess. But also, could just be that he doesn't think there are other vampires. Also, I love that Helly was already getting teased by Jan. It's like, ooh, I see that you like this person. Also, actually notably, he's not like, oh my god, don't befriend the human. So, I don't know if like different versions, different dimensions, or maybe like Jan doesn't really have an opinion. I don't think maybe he hasn't even shown up in the web novel. I just think it's interesting that he isn't particularly like commenting on the fact that she's human. Is that more evidence of this being in a different dimension? Maybe. I'm gonna go ahead and read some comments and things that I found. First, this is on Twitter. This is by Lame Game Hero, who is one of my patrons as well. And she said, it's possible that Solon feels inferior to his brothers because he transforms into a wolf and not a werewolf. Maybe he shows extra disdain for the werewolves in order to compensate. And then she attached some photos. This is the tweet. I like this theory that maybe he can transform into a wolf and that's like his power. I would kind of like to see that, actually. Can you imagine being a vampire and your sworn enemies are werewolves and your vampire ability is to turn into a wolf? If that's not what happens, can someone please write that? Thanks. And yeah, it does definitely explain the things that we've seen, like with the wolf imagery before too. It definitely adds like an extra layer to that, because it could be like, that's his power. Very interesting. Okay, I might be overthinking this, but in the webtoon when the teacher was telling Suha about the school rules, she mentioned something about a murder that happened nearby, and rumors say it was done by a vampire. And coincidentally, Helly bumps into Suha right after the teacher told her that. Potentially murdered that other vampire. Could that be some weird connection? It definitely could be. I'm assuming you mean like, could that be a connection between dimensions, which it could. That's actually an interesting thought. Like, what if the things that are happening in the web novel are also happening in the webtoon, but they're not the ones actively doing it because it's the people in the web novel? I really like this theory. Someone else commented, I thought the night classes were a safety thing so that they're awake in case vampires attack. That's a really good thing that could be like a logical reason as to why they have night classes, because I was very like, why would you have night classes? I didn't think of it that way, but it definitely could make sense. That's a very logical reasoning. And if I was working for the school, whether or not I knew that they were vampires, that could be my excuse. Be like, look, we have night classes so that everyone remains safe. We're all alert should a vampire attack. And then there was a lot of people commenting on Vampire Night, which is an anime, because they run both day and night classes, and the like main character attends the day classes while the other people, the vampires, attend the night classes, and no one knows that they're vampires that study there. So there's like a lot of parallels between the anime and that. Several of the comments actually mention a big spoiler for Vampire Night. So like, give me 10 seconds to spoil Vampire Night if you're gonna watch it. One of the main characters actually has sealed vampire powers, and she's actually a vampire, but her powers were sealed, and they suggest that that could be Suha, so spoilers over. There were also a couple comments on Sungun having 2 different colored eyes and asked if it was like related to the cat. I do want to say Sungun's eye color are not the color of the cat's eyes. The cat's eyes are specifically blue and green. Sungun's eyes are different than that. One of them is brown, I think. So just keeping that in mind. I don't think he's related to the cat in that sense, because yeah, the cat is specifically blue and green all of the time. It's a really common one, so that's why I wanted to highlight it here. Another theory related to Solon, someone said that they feel like he's half vampire, half wolf, instead, or half vampire and half human. And maybe he doesn't have his own power, but he can mimic others' powers. This is kind of what I was thinking originally too. This maybe is a reason why he feels inferior. One more theory I have is that maybe it is Sungun who caused the fire in their orphanage. And given taken, we see Sungun's hand on fire. I could actually really see that too. And then someone else also replied to that. Yeah, I also believe in the theory of Solon being able to imitate others' powers because of the trailer. Sungun did the thing where he caught the ball that was thrown to him as super strength. So yeah, there's definitely indication that Solon is able to maybe do more things, and that's related to a secret. I like both directions. I like the idea that he could turn into a wolf, and I like the idea that perhaps he can mimic other people's powers. I also like the idea that he's maybe half human or half wolf, and that could also explain the 2 different colored eyes that he has. Another theory about Suha, specifically, that maybe she's a hybrid between a werewolf and a vampire, like the hyphen, which I did describe her as last time, because she seems to have super speed and strength, which are vampire abilities, but Helly wasn't able to identify her as one, maybe because her werewolf side kind of hides her aura. I don't know. Helly knows who is a vampire and who isn't. Yeah, we don't know how he's able to tell that apart. I like this idea too. Suha definitely has some interesting things to her, and her being half werewolf, half vampire could possibly explain that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Moving on. The StarSeekers. Okay, so again, we're going to start with the web novel here, because the web novel I do still think is quite a bit behind the webtoon. So it starts out with the boys in the company car. They're skidding to a stop. So this was like picking up from the last chapter, right? Where I thought they were going to be in a car accident. They kind of are, I guess. But they're among many other cars who've all like skidded and stopped. Their manager is unconscious or like injured in the front seat. And the reason for this is that they've apparently succeeded in extracting black water. I'm not sure what black water is. Because previously I thought it was like a company. But I think that the company is called Blackwater, but it also it tries to extract black water, which I'm guessing is some kind of like a magical substance that appeared when the world got magic. And it's clearly highly volatile and pretty dangerous. And it makes me wonder if like the black water is what we see in the sinkholes, maybe? I don't know, I always thought it was weird that there was like swirling water in the sinkholes. Maybe it's black water. Anyways, apparently it makes people lose consciousness if they are not magical. And it makes them apparently really sick because the manager just never comes back after this. So that sucks for the manager, sorry. The boys are unaffected, and they're obviously confused. They're like, well, we don't have magic. Why didn't it affect us? Obviously it's because they actually have magic, but they just don't know it yet. And then the web novel spends a lot of time with them practicing and like showing us how hard they're working to try to just like keep up or even like slightly compete with any of the tier 1 like magical groups. And they do mention like, oh, Tahoe was the one that messed up and he needs to practice a little bit longer or whatever. But the chapter does end with what I think is probably going to be the scene, the opening scene of Eternity, like, or Eternally? Like the Eternally music video, you know, where Subin like wakes up after having a vision. I think this is the moment where he falls like asleep to have that vision. He basically passes out, and then it says he is swept into a place of cold and violent winds yet again. So I don't know, it makes me think of like the stadium and stuff like that, because I'm guessing they didn't have powers yet at that point during the Eternity music video, which makes sense if Subin is like confused about these visions. I don't know if he's going to get some sort of vision where the dice will emerge or what, like if it'll go into that whole thing, or if it's going to change how that happens, or if I'm just a little bit too early and Eternity hasn't happened yet. Eternally, gosh, I don't know. Basically, I don't know how directly this is going to tie into that just yet, although I'm pretty sure this is like the same vein of what happens in that music video, because Eternally was definitely in the storyline. So I'm assuming there is at least a lot of accuracy between the music video and this story. I just am not sure if it actually happens in that order or that quickly. But it is helping to give me kind of a sense of a timeline of what we've seen already, so good to note. Anyways, in terms of the webtoon, it does pick up with us in a meeting, I guess, with the aunties, which I know that's not what they're called in the story. I think that's what they're referencing, but that's not what they're called, but I can't say the word that they're called. So Aunties. They mentioned that the boys of legend or destiny or whatever, and how they're like attacked the wrong ones. They're like, oh, they ended up attacking the wrong ones. Well, and then they kind of just decide that they're going to take them out just in case, because they can't have anyone, you know, messing up their plans, basically. And then we meet TXT's new manager, DK. He conveniently looks super creepy, and he matches what the aunties were just wearing, so I would not be surprised if he was somehow associated with them. And then we get some really cute moment with the gums. So even as Sol and Avis, you know, the Sukai gum agenda lives on. Truly the closest of gums throughout all of the universes. Anyways, because last time Sol manifested some magic in order to defend them, it's kind of like gotten really popular. They're like, whoa, it's so cool. And they're getting all these interviews and all these things. And Avis is kind of like extra concerned for Sol. He's like, I think that you might be working too hard. He's obviously worried about overworking and like taking on too much responsibility. And it's really cute, actually. Avis is adorable and must be protected at all costs. Anyways, later in the company car, which they've gotten back, how kind, the sus manager, DK, basically tricking Sol into like leaving the car because he's like, oh, the manager wants to talk to you alone, and they're like, oh, he must have gotten a solo gig because he's the one with powers, so I guess that makes sense. Like, it doesn't seem like it's like they're jealous of it, they're just like, oh yeah, it makes sense. But he tricks them, and then he basically almost kills the other members by, first of all, ramming them into in the company car. It almost crashes into like a truck with black water on it. And we know how dangerous and volatile this substance is because of the web novel, so it's like, holy crap, you can't just like crash them into black water. That would cause so many negative effects for everyone, not just them who are in a car crash. However, Sol obviously realizes what's going on, and his magic manifests again. I'm not sure, like, is his magic only manifesting in like dangerous situations? Because I could see that being an issue for the group. But he uses his magic to put up a shield, like the telekinesis kind, again, and unfortunately the shield starts to break, and the chapter ends with him saying, no! But we do see, like, the hand of someone else for a moment, and I can't tell whose hand it is, but it's definitely one of the people in the car's hands. I want to say it's Avis's hand. It's possible that, you know, one of them are going to manifest magic. I am leaning towards Avis, obviously. But it's also possible, I suppose, that it could be Moa, like the manifestation of Moa. I'm kind of waiting for her to show up because I don't know exactly how that's happening. But I have another theory in my head, you know, because they're focusing a lot on Avis. I do think this is related to Avis. But I do wonder, because he's the one who we see like rewinding time, like in the Runaway music video. I wonder if he's about to like sometime, so that, I don't know, just a thought. I'm waiting for them to do the time rewinding thingy. I suppose he could do something else too, but what are your predictions for that? Because that's the only way I could see them getting out of this, because it's showing like they're basically crashed into this truck full of black water. The only way to fix that, I feel like, is to reverse time. I don't know. What are your predictions for that? Again, please no spoilers if you did pay to read the next chapter. You know, we're gonna cover it next week. We'll chat about that next week. But yeah, let me know what you think, because exciting. Other things that I noticed in here that are kind of important. Actually, it's not important. Tata News was the name of the news website that was like reporting on Sol's like abilities, his new abilities, and I just thought that was funny because I thought of Tata like from BT21, and I don't know if that's a reference, but I just wanted to mention it because I thought it was fun. That's literally the only thing I wanted to mention. Let me read a couple comments here. Is it weird that I've always been suspicious of Kai's character in the StarSeekers? When you mentioned him being the one who might have summoned the dragon, it just helped my theory. I'm still working on the theory since I don't have enough proof. I don't think it's weird that you've been suspicious of Kai. I think a lot of people were suspicious of Kai. It didn't help that his wings in Nap of a Star looked fake. We couldn't decide if it was like actually meant to be fake wings or if it was meant to be like just this stylistic thing. It doesn't help that his wings change from what look like angel wings or white bird wings, I guess, to like dragon wings or devil wings or something. So that definitely doesn't help Kai's case. I personally think that Kai is the most innocent. And whether or not that ends up making him suspicious, maybe. But I do think there's lots of things that point to him being really lucky or like just things like that. We do see like a hint of like a flashback of Kai in this scene, so like there's clearly something that happened with his parents maybe, or like an older sibling, which I think is really interesting, but we don't have any answers on that yet. But I am interested to see what they are doing with that. With your theory of Star 1 actually bringing magic to the real world, what if the Starlight Festival happened 10 years ago and that's when Chakho opened the wormhole going from the real world with his magic from his race along with his book, and the reason they still haven't had their magic was either because they were still regaining their magic along with their memories, or because their magic is beyond the choices of magical idols, since they came from different magical races. Yeah, I do actually wonder, like, maybe the Star Festival was maybe 10 years ago, and it's like that's what opened up the thing. I do wonder if like the magic and their memories are somehow tied together as well. I do agree with that. Like maybe that's why it only comes out in like dangerous situations, because they don't really remember how to use it, but they can. And clearly their magic is very powerful. Like they kind of mention like, oh, like Soul's magic is really powerful. So clearly it's like, they're like, wow, they're shocked that he'd never used magic before because it was really strong magic. I don't know, but I definitely think like them being able to use magic or not being able to use magic is probably tied to their memories in one way or another. Yeah, I agree with that. I still think the aunties are somehow related to Soul and Chakho. I replied to this and I said, yeah. I couldn't tell if in the trailer they were being chased or if they were like just going with them. After reading this chapter, I do feel less suspicious of Soul and Chakho. However, Soul doesn't have his memories, so, by the way, if you're not sure what we're talking about, we're relating to the fact that they are both liars in the Can't You See Me music video, and then in the animation when they're attacked, the Dooms Night, they're attacked with, by these people, and people mentioned, like, this looks really similar to, like, Tan's outfit and stuff like that, and so there was a theory going around that maybe Tan and Subin, the two liars, were actually the ones that attacked them or were somehow related to that. I think it's still possible they're related to it, although I don't know if they know that they're related to it. Just with the like insight of the new chapter. Anyways, that's kind of it for today. This week, I guess. My Blessed Cursed video is coming. Just if you were wondering, it is coming. The script is done. I just have to film. I know I said that last time, but there's actually not a lot of time for me to film. I tend to film in the mornings before I go to work, and then it's way too dark to film at night. I just don't like filming at night. It just doesn't look good in the slightest, so that's why it's so hard for me to find time to film, because there's like an hour in the mornings before I go to work to film, and so it's a little tight, but I'm doing my best. That video is coming. It's on its way. And then hopefully we'll be back on track with everything else. But yeah, I just wanted to like update you guys on that because I know some people were asking and wondering, so yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on so that YouTube tells you every single time that I post a new video. All of my social media is linked in the description below, including my Discord server where we have discussions every single week when these things drop, so make sure that if you want to chat with people that it's in there, and it also gives you like notifications and stuff about when I post things. Also, I want to give a shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for your support. As it is, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay sunny, my friends. Bye!